back, guys. This is a new season of No Ask. And I don't know, though, we'll be also coming out in a new season, too.
That's crazy.
We're back, baby. It's summer. School's out.
It's amazing how
we
much
have
time
and we're free. And we have to start working and do other things.
I was going to say, it's amazing how much time we have before we both find like actual full-time jobs
Right?
to take up all of our time.
Goodness. But today, I wanted to talk about entertainment. It's a big, broad category.
It's what we're doing, bud.
Yeah, we try. We do our best.
Some people find us entertaining.
That's the dream. I wanted to specify what entertainment was. What is entertaining and what does that mean? So
Okay.
that's kind of what I want to discuss.
All right.
And so my little goal right here I have is explain objectively what makes something entertaining, taste aside.
Okay. So tastes aside. That's
Yes.
really important there.
Yeah.
Because I could go into a whole rant about the aesthetics.
Oh,
of,
I know. And there's all these
taste.
different styles and there's what people are going for and goals
Yeah.
that aren't necessarily entertainment.
Yeah, I think a good place to start with that might be the definition. And so that's the very first thing I looked up.
Okay.
Was the Merriam-Webster definition of entertaining is the action of providing or being provided with amusement or enjoyment. So in my opinion, that just means it's something that keeps your attention, is aesthetically pleasing, and it kind of elicits some sort of emotion from you.
Now, do you think there's some objective qualities that we can think of later that will apply to anything? If this applies, that would help it be entertaining.
I think the elicits emotion is a good one for that. It's if this thing moves me, if it makes me laugh, it makes me cry, makes me smile, I think that's a good indicator of something being entertaining. I don't know, something that makes me want to listen to more of it.
Yeah.
I guess I'm thinking in context of our podcast or a podcast in general. It's I listen to it if I'm just soothed by it. There's some scratch there that it's itching, you know?
Yeah, and I wanted to be really broad with the word entertainment, so we could use multiple genres of, or I guess mediums is what I want to say. And so video games, they can be entertaining, movies, podcasts, music. And I was curious if there's anything that we should specifically exclude.
So things that aren't entertainment?
Yeah, but might seem like they'd fall into the category fine art. You probably don't want to judge that on whether it's entertaining or not. You want to judge it on the craft and the skill and boundaries and whatnot, the aesthetics of it.
There's actually this 5-layer kind of burrito dip of what they classify entertainment as in the film industry. It's a broad sense of categorization, which actually makes it fit perfectly for this podcast, so I probably should have researched it before. But basically at the top you've got the high entertainment, and that's fine art. And the reason those are considered high entertainment is because you have to be more educated in what those things are in order to look at them and be oh, this is entertaining. I find this entertaining because of the line work used in this fine art and because of all of the strokes and the passion that you can read behind a Jackson Pollock painting.
Now, if something is high entertainment, is it more entertaining, or because it appeals to less people, wouldn't that make it generally less entertaining?
See, I think that's the argument I was trying to get from you there. So I think what you're wanting to do with this is exclude that upper level. So it's...
Yeah, I almost want something to be appealing to the most number of people possible.
Yeah.
And how can we do that, and what qualities make something that?
I think what we could put that into is... Okay, so something that appeals to the masses, so that doesn't need any reference. So you don't have to do research to understand it. Something that... I don't know, would you say something that's eccentric is more entertaining? The more over the top something is, the more entertaining it is?
It could be. I feel there's definitely a threshold where it pushes too far. I know now news is oversaturated with these highline topics. I'm not entertained by those. I won't even look at them when there's just oh, clearly you're trying to grab my attention. And maybe that's because I know the article won't be as entertaining as the headline. Stuff like that doesn't necessarily draw my attention. So maybe eccentric stuff may or may not be, depending.
Okay, so in terms of this hierarchy I'm talking about, this would be considered the lower middle tier. It's separated in 5. It's high, upper middle, low, and then there's folk art and paracinema or whatever. But yeah, so right there in the middle is kind of where you find things like the big summer blockbusters. You find your Marvel movies, you find that kind of stuff where it's really colorful and vibrant, and the story doesn't necessarily matter, but it still is entertaining to a large group of people because of that. Now, what I consider entertaining is usually in this level, and actually in the level right above, where it's more you've got to know a little bit more of the backstory. Whereas like Marvel could be argued to be in this one or the one above, because the MCU in theory, like you could read the comics and have this like supplemental material to be like, oh yeah, that's you have
and
to
most
have
of
that.
them are relatively isolated. But like recently, Endgame came out, and you can watch it without all the other ones, but they don't really cater to that audience. It doesn't seem like. So there's a few characters that they don't necessarily explain, and like some plot points and jokes that aren't like meant for everyone.
And see, I think that's like the beauty of the MCU is that while you don't have to have all this other knowledge, having this other knowledge does add an extra layer of dimension to it. Because I know people who don't like superheroes that are like, oh yeah, I saw Endgame, it was all right, it was good. But like people who like superheroes and are like super into like this whole universe, they're like, oh my god, I fucking loved it, I laughed, I cried again, and then I laughed some more.
So my brother asked me about it, and he had seen most of the movies, and he took his wife to it, and so I was curious what she had to say. So I was asking her about it and like what she thought, and she like cried in the first 2 minutes because there's like a sad thing, and I was like, oh, so it can elicit emotion and be entertaining without her knowing who the character is, because it's relatable in a different way.
And that makes it like perfect.
That's
like,
kind of what I'm looking for. Yeah, that's that definition that I'm like, okay, they can make something that's even more relatable to people who know about it, but can still work for people who don't.
So you want something that's in that area. So yeah, I think it's probably a good decision to take out like fine art, experimental media. And this is a tough subject for me, because what I really like is like that upper level where it makes you think a little bit, but the bigger, like more bloated category is for definitely the one below.
So that's like where the Oscars come in, and people are like, I've never heard of half these movies. Why are they the like ones that are up for things? And then you watch it and you're like, I don't know if I really like that. And it's because it's all these like film majors or whatever. Like there's some like fancy people like that are like being the judges there.
Yeah, so that is precisely what goes in the upper middle, is Academy like recommended movies, movies that come out of film festivals like Sundance. But yeah, no, so like it's funny that it's like I want to be up in that category. Like that's the stuff I really like.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that, but I think you need like a baseline of like, oh, this is things that could like really.
So yeah, I think Endgame, a lot of the Marvel movies are good like baseline. And even Star Wars now. Star Wars is falling into that category where it's just like, oh yeah, everybody knows about it. And it can kind of entertain everybody, but it's still got that extra layer that can add more.
All right, so I was going to go down and look through. I have some words here, and then I just kind of want to discuss this topic, see if like you think it would be good or bad or necessary for it to be entertaining. My first thing is, does something need to have replayability?
In my personal opinion, yeah, because I like to go back and see more, because films that are like really well done, you are going to be able to watch them multiple times. And I guess I'm speaking specifically to films here.
But yeah, I'm thinking like these words, like if you want to think about it like music, I kind of want to be able to listen to the same song over and over again instead of just once. Or I want to be able to play a board game multiple times and feel like I still get something out of it each time.
Have multiple outcomes for that. Yeah, so I think replayability is a big part of something's entertainment value, because something can be entertaining, but you can only see it one time. And have like that be like all. I'm trying to think of an example off the top of my head.
If it really was entertaining and you didn't want to go back to it, was it entertaining? Can you really enjoy something and then not want to go back to it?
Yes.
Yes.
My ex.
It was good while it lasted.
Got it. No, I mean, I think so, because I think there's something about having just that moment. And maybe I'm getting a little bit too like philosophical with it and whatever, but like there's a big push. I read an article the other day. It's like millennials are spending less money on physical items and more money on experiences.
Yeah.
I don't know. I am on board with it, but I also like my physical items.
Yeah.
So, but there is something to be said about like that intangible, oh, I was here in that moment. And so it was entertaining, but that's all it was. I'll let it have that moment. But I suppose
But I feel like our younger generation tries to turn things into more, you know, with social media and stuff, tries to make it tangible, make the intangible tangible, and like photograph the moment so they can like relive it and stuff.
But like still like being in that moment. It's like when you're trying to retell a joke from an experience you had. It's like, oh, so-and-so did this and they did this and everyone laughed, and then it wasn't funny to like other people. It's like, oh, it had to be there. It's like, so there's something about those moments that are very explicitly entertaining, but for some reason looking back after the fact, it's not. So I think had to be there jokes definitely fall into there because they are mass appealing.
So a question I kind of wanted to ask earlier that I didn't think about, does something have to be good to be entertaining?
No.
No, okay.
No.
Because I didn't think so. And the way you said that joke, it's like, oh, it might not appeal later. So maybe it wasn't a good joke, but since we were all in the moment living it together, it did elicit the joy. It did do the things that require the definition of entertainment.
Yeah, no, and there's like trash cinema. Some people love like B movies and like trash aesthetics and whatever. It's not particularly my thing. That being said, I do like trash new media where it's like YouTube videos. There's something about like grungy guerrilla style of video someone shot on their phone of them doing like a sick skateboard trick and then just completely failing. It's like, I love that. It's so real. That person actually got hurt. And that just it feeds my little like,
But objectively,
whatever.
from your film school and learning, it's like, it's not good.
Yeah.
Like they didn't meet any of the rules. They didn't intentionally break any of them. It still like brought out joy and things like that.
So brought out joy to see a kid break his skateboard and rack himself.
Whatever it is.
But yeah, no, it definitely not. Good is another term we could have an entire episode about. In one of my film classes, we talked about what makes something good. It's so hard to wrap your head around the systems that are in place for aesthetics and film qualities and entertainment for what makes something like good. It's so hard to argue that.
When I was trying to think of like, is good and entertainment different? I was trying to like see what would be the example of that. And what came to my mind was like an Adam Sandler movie.
Okay.
Where it's like, I can sit through it and I can laugh and have a good time, but I'm not going to go like recommend it to everyone around me. And it's like,
Is that just like the shame of having gone and seen an Adam Sandler movie in the theater?
I don't think I've ever seen an Adam Sandler movie in the theater.
Oh, really?
But I've owned a few DVDs.
I think I saw Jack and Jill in the theaters.
Really?
Yeah.
That's not even like real Adam. That's not like
that's
classic good.
Yeah,
like,
that's not like
quote-unquote,
Waterboy or what's the other
50
one?
First Dates or
Yeah.
something like that.
Like those are like
Grown Ups. I might have seen Grown Ups in theaters.
I saw Grown Ups on a bus actually.
Hey.
It was no. I mean, actually, if anything, that's the place that movie was meant to be watched. It was meant to be watched going 50 miles an hour on a charger bus.
There it is.
But yeah, no, like definitely, there's that edge. But yeah, you were saying I cut you off.
Oh, I was just saying that like, yeah, an Adam Sandler movie is something that I would enjoy. Not having to think about it, but like if I had to break it down and really write like what made this a good movie, I don't know if I could.
I think just like that quality of making people laugh, like whatever you say about Adam Sandler movies, like whether you hate them or love them, you cannot deny the mass appeal to them, which is why they fit our criteria, because they are successful.
Yeah.
People go nuts for these movies, and I personally don't understand why, but the masses have spoken, I suppose.
Yeah, and that's something that I was wondering is, does popularity / community equal entertaining? Can you not have a following and still be something entertaining?
So we are getting into dangerous territory here because we're playing with your brackets that we've set. So I would say yes, something that doesn't have a following can be entertaining. There's tons of like, especially now, like YouTube channels, people who like put art films or their student films on like Vimeo or Facebook or Instagram or whatever. There's tons of these like micro media accounts that are good. It's just they don't have a following yet, or they may never have a following because now our entire society's basis for fame and finding new things to be entertaining is set upon an algorithm, which if you don't know how to play it, and you don't know how to do things right, then a lot of times you're not going to get found.
Yeah, and a part of it is like being already a part of the system and like integrating yourself real early on.
You have to be a part of that grid.
Yeah, because I was wondering, I was like, financial success. Clearly, the Marvel movies are making millions of dollars. They must be doing something right. Does that make them more entertaining than, say, a small YouTube channel who only has 50 followers?
Yeah, that's like an extremely subjective statement. But I think in the parameters of what we've said at the beginning, we would have to say no, right? Because we've already said it as whatever appeals to like the masses. And so if it doesn't appeal to the masses, then I guess
It's less
no?
entertaining.
Yeah. But that's
But
like,
if we play with like the elicits joy thing, then you could go like the ratio of people who found joy out of this might be higher for the YouTube channel and lower for the movie. But the total would be higher for the movie and lower for the YouTube channel. And so which one do you look at? Do you look at the total or the percentage?
I think I'd look at the... It depends on how you're looking. This is some like philosophy stuff.
I know.
That you're throwing out there. I think if you're looking at like, what would bring the most joy to people, I think I'd rather look at the percentage.
Yeah. I think I would agree. Like if you had a YouTube channel and you had 50 views and 50 likes, that's a better review than 100 million people seeing Avengers Endgame and only getting a 75 on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, yeah, that's okay. That fits. I was just doing thoughts and calculations. And,
yeah, I don't
cut
know.
this
Those
out,
50
Derek.
likes might pass the 75% of the 100 million.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think a better analogy for that might be like, so it's got the 50-50, but only 4 people have seen it, versus like if that scales with like a Marvel movie. I think with a Marvel movie it may not scale. It could be like you show it to 4 people and 3 of them hate it and 1 of them love it. Whereas this video, it could be that way every time, where it's like 2 and 2. So I think that's the better way to look at entertainment on like a small scale. But it gets tough to like scale that stuff up because you'll never know, because that person may never have more than 4 views on their channel.
Yeah, I guess I mentioned to you last night, I watched a video where Paddington 2 was like the only movie on Rotten Tomatoes to have 100% like. Is that because Paddington 2 only attracted people that would like Paddington 2? They had a decent audience. It's not like nobody saw it and they just like happened to like their own video kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's one area where it's like they're kind of big and they got lots of likes. But is that because they attracted the right audience?
I would say it's probably partially attributed to that, because people who saw Paddington 1 and didn't like it definitely didn't go and see Paddington 2. Yeah, I mean, I guess what sequels in general do is narrow their audience down based on like past experiences. So like the Fast and Furious movies are like a good example of that. Where, like their audience has gotten so narrow that they're down to the exact formula that makes a good movie for their demographic, which is The Rock, explosions,
and fast cars.
And fast cars that you jump out of in the middle. Or no, not The Rock.
Fast cars and furious people.
It may not even be The Rock. It's just like bald, ripped dude.
Yeah.
Because wasn't it Vin Diesel in the earlier ones?
Yeah.
Is Vin Diesel still in this one?
I don't know.
Or is
they're making some sort of spin-off one that has The Rock and then someone who looks
it's
kind of
Hobbs
like
and
Vin
Shaw.
Diesel, but I don't know who it is.
It might be following another story, part of like
Yeah, I think it's just made by like the producers and it's like in association with
the Fast and Furious cinematic universe.
But I think it's like in the title, it's like Hobbs and Shaw by Fast and Furious.
Yeah.
So
Could you imagine like having to make a project that just bears the name of your previous projects in order to achieve
get views.
success?
Yeah.
It's like if I Forever was just like Humorish in association with Mainstream Mechs, in association with a giant midget, in association with like all of my previous whatever. It's like I would hate that. It's just like dragging my name through all of this stuff. It's like, no, I want to make something new that people like, not just because I made it. But I've gotten off track here. Where were we?
I guess I was talking earlier about how my sister cried at the beginning of the movie. And I was like, oh, relatability. That seems like a quality, especially in movies. Do you want to see a relatable character?
Yeah.
And I was curious, is that necessary for entertainment?
I don't think it's necessary, but I think you're going to see a quote unquote regular guy in almost any movie that has a complex world that they're like trying to build. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is a great example of that. You're following this guy who has no idea what's going on, and thus, as he is learning, he is acting as kind of like a port key for the audience to also be learning. And so, no, I don't think it's always necessary to have your relatable character, but it does make it easier to explain complex plots, and it is definitely easier to have someone to root for.
Let's say like Harry Potter. It's something where it transports you into a mystical world. And you want to be transported into a mystical world. But do you still need that relatable character or something relatable to latch onto? Or is it too jarring if there isn't?
I think at first you need that, especially for these like mainstream successes to happen. I think that's kind of the issue with, what was it, like Maze Runner or whatever?
Yeah.
I feel like in those movies, you're just kind of dropped in that world and not really like given anything. And for a mass audience, it's really hard to do that and keep them entertained, especially now, because we are in a world of swipe left, swipe right. And whether you're actually on Tinder or not, that doesn't matter. It's just like immediacy, like having the ability to choose whatever. And if it doesn't meet your expectations immediately, you're like,
I was with my family this weekend, and my mom, aunt, and uncle, dad, and all were talking, and they're saying how they're going to go home and read, but they're only going to read 2 pages, and then they're going to fall asleep. And then they're like, well, the next time they have to read the 2 pages again because they fell asleep during it. And they're like, can't we just have like a 10-page book where my 2 pages are enough to get far enough? And it's like, well, that defeats the whole purpose of the medium. But again, like even someone who's older and not necessarily in that like swipe right, swipe left typical group, they're like, can't things just be sped up for me? Can't I just get my thing right away?
Well, I think that's part of the issue is like, humans have thought that forever. It's like, can't we just have this now? Can't we just do this now? That has led to the innovation of having this immediacy, which now has become a problem because we're not patient. Like, people don't want to wait for shit.
Or just getting closer and closer to that, but then we find other things that we want also to be closer to that. But
Yeah, and Jimmy John's isn't helping.
Right?
It's freaky fast.
When Jimmy John's is so fast, and then I'm like, I want a 7-course meal.
And they're like, here.
But Jimmy John's at the same time, yeah.
It's like, at Jimmy John's, you're like, I want, and they're like, number 9, here you go.
Yeah.
Like,
But then I go to Red Lobster, and they don't do that, and I'm upset, because I'm
Yeah.
like, Jimmy John's can do it, why can't you?
yeah. Why can't you know that I want the lobster tail with shrimp scallops or whatever?
Amazon knows what I want before I even do with their
It's
ads,
true.
so like...
Amazon knows when I'm out of
Shouldn't everyone?
batteries. They're just like, hey, are you out of batteries? I'm like, yeah, I guess I am. Who told you?
Is there cameras? Do you keep cameras in your old batteries?
I mean, I guess I'm not complaining.
Yeah.
Thanks. I almost, ran out. I need those. But yeah, no, like for all of time, I feel like we've been wanting to get faster and faster. And now we have to deal with the repercussions of our sins, basically.
Yeah.
I don't have anything else to add to that.
Yeah, I was thinking we do some D&D, and that is another scenario where immersion is kind of the goal. It's to get out of the real world, be your fantasy character, but when this world comes around you, all your decisions are already kind of influenced by who you are and like what they did. And I feel like the desire to root your character in like real decisions is something where it's like, oh, I want to be relatable somehow. Even if it's not to me, I want to be relatable to someone.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. I think I could see that. I don't know, when I play D&D, and this is the part of the podcast where you lose all the normal listeners. Just like people who are like, oh, D&D, yeah.
Dungeons and Dragons.
Go play with your LARPing equipment and put on your hat. And
Roll a
whatever.
D30 or something.
Yeah, go fucking a D12. It's not
Now
the
we lost our
fucking- the
actual
band.
nerds.
Yeah, now they're all mad at us. Like, don't make fun of us preemptively. They didn't know. Some people didn't know what D&D was. Some people thought it was like that tire place. But like, no, in D&D, I think, see, I play it a little bit different. I want a character that I maybe have almost no connection to, but except for like the base feelings, kind of. I don't know. The relatability for me comes from like an acting standpoint, where it's like I want to be able to relate to this character so I can make realistic wow, I can't talk. Realistic decisions as them and go on. But I could, I guess there's that underlying desire to be understood by others that we just kind of innately have. It's part of being a social creature.
So when creating those like characters, and this can apply to books and movies and stuff too, does the entertaining value of the relatability come from it being universally relatable, or like just relatable to you or someone you've seen?
I think it comes from a little bit of the universal like relatability, because once again we are talking about like these like big picture kind of projects where we want to feel like we belong. It's like horoscopes. Having these general things and telling people essentially it's like, this applies to you. Then people want to believe. It's like, oh yeah, that is me. It's like, oh my God, you know me. And everyone wants to be known, and everyone wants to like be understood.
Yeah.
And so having that universality,
The wide sweeping.
yeah, like it helps people get more involved in these worlds where it's just like, oh yeah, I understand this guy. It's like having the guy in Black Panther.
Oh,
He plays
Warmonger or
Watson.
Killmonger?
No, not Michael B. Jordan.
No.
Martin Freeman.
Martin
Yeah,
Freeman.
it's like having Martin Freeman in
And he
Black
is
Panther.
Black Panther. He is
No, Martin Freeman is the white guy in Black Panther. So unfortunately, in the film industry, so that movie was a big deal because they hired ton of African American actors and workers to be in it and help it, and it pushed like this social kind of agenda. But unfortunately, a lot of the audiences of these Marvel movies are predominantly, I don't want to say predominantly straight white males, because they are a little bit, like the movies are a little bit campy themselves, but like there's a lot of Caucasian audience that goes and sees these movies. And so having Martin Freeman in there, even though he as an actor is from the UK, it gives that majority audience something to focus on, be like, oh yeah, this is the relatable character in this world.
Yeah, I see. Okay.
Yeah, he was like that focal point. And just like to kind of go off on a little bit of a tangent, there was a
He
funny...
was also an Hitchhiker's Guide, right?
Yeah, that's right. He was.
talked
This is Martin Freeman, the podcast.
He is entertaining. That's what we're finding out. Is
I mean,
Martin
honestly,
Freeman.
though, I really like him. He was in Sherlock, too. He played Watson.
Yep.
Fucking great. goddamn love him. He's got such like a plain but adorable face.
Yeah, it's like just unique enough, but like relatable enough.
Yeah, and he's got like that little like ball nose, which lets him play like the fantasy characters. So like that's why he was able to be the Hobbit. And people are like, oh yeah, look at him go. And then he grew a mustache in season 3 of Sherlock, and people are like, oh, take it off, you're not whimsical anymore. And then anyway, sorry, I'm going on a tangent about Martin Freeman. No, there was a funny tweet about him that I read soon after Black Panther came out, where it's like, shout out to Martin Freeman being the relatable white guy in Black Panther, who was around to do just enough to help as much as he was comfortable doing for the black community or something. I was like, ooh, that's, I mean, social commentary, hooray. Yeah. But it helps with things a lot. Smooth it over. If you know what your audience is, who your audience is, and you can have your relatable character be someone in that. And I think that's a good way to set demographic just in general, is like, the main story's about this, but you know your target demographic that has all the money is this. So if you make your main character
so we can
that target,
funnel them in, then they can like see the entertaining that's outside of just the relatability.
Exactly. That like really helps with those kinds of movies.
So yeah, you don't necessarily need to be relatable, but to get the audience, it's kind of necessary.
I mean, unfortunately, in entertainment, it's all about money. The relatable guy helps you get the money, but the overarching story helps communicate your message to the audience you're actually trying to get to. Social science or whatever, I guess.
Yeah, it's funny. They're just talking about like entertainment, which seems kind of like a lighthearted thing, but it kind of dives into a little bit of philosophy and a little bit of social commentary and things like that.
I mean, I think what makes good entertainment for me is something that just has something to say. In my script writing courses, they were always saying that the best movies have a message. Whatever message you're trying to say, you're going to tell it with this story. And it's going to be way more basic than you think it is. It's about a boy who meets a girl, and then he loses her, and then he gets her. But the message could be about racism, or about abortion, or about whatever. You have this base story. It's just now up to you to tell your message using this base story.
Should something that's entertaining be easy to consume?
For mass audiences, yes.
Yes.
For niche audiences, not always. But I think if you're trying to get popularity, then yeah, it has to be something that's like you can sit down and halfway watch it or whatever. That's how you get into aesthetics of like television, because television and sitcoms almost always follow the same formulas. So look at like The Big Bang Theory or anything Chuck Lorre. All looks the same. Or Chuck Lorre, is that how you say his name? I don't remember. But like all of his stuff is exactly the same. It's like the perfect formula for sitcom television. It's very bright and colorful. It's got high key lighting, which means you can see everything. There's no like dynamic dark shadows that are dramatic. It all looks very much on a set, but every 6 minutes it has that like whoop, and then it brings back in the theme song really loud so that you can be in another room and like know it's coming on, or you can be doing something else while it's happening.
It's a Pavlovian response.
Exactly.
Where you hear the like...
It conditions
in
you.
Big Bang Theory, it's like the atom swooping around. And so you hear that and you're like, oh, Big Bang's on. Maybe I should watch it or something.
Yeah. Basically, it's just the formula you follow allows you to not have to look at it. You literally can put on shit in the background that I'm not listening to, or that I'm not watching, but I'm like listening to kind of half-heartedly while I'm doing something else on my phone. Does it have to be easy to consume or something?
Yeah, easy to consume.
It's like, I think it does better if it is easy to consume, which is kind of the point I was trying to drive across with like Big Bang Theory, because that is wildly successful. Like that show has been going on for just way too long. And
they are ending though.
Are they? Yeah. Okay, well that's good. But like, I'm not a huge fan of Big Bang Theory.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's easy to consume makes it super, super popular.
Now, Big Bang almost masks itself as like high media a little bit. Do you think that's an important quality? Is that they like try to make themselves seem higher, talking about science and nerds, things that most people don't know about, but they talk about it in such simple terms that it'd be impossible not to be able to follow them?
I think it never hurts to compliment your audience.
Yeah, so they feel superior to them what they already
I mean,
are.
you could take Rick and Morty, for example. It became a whole thing that only intellectuals watch Rick and Morty, because Rick and Morty is nothing but space science and, you know, whatever. It's like, you can't just put a sci-fi word next to a car word and expect it to be something.
Grab me the quantum carburetor.
Yeah. Is it the quantum carburetor? It's like, no, it's subatomic battery.
Yeah, that's what
that complimenting the audience never ever hurts you.
But yeah, with Rick and Morty, there's nothing that like they don't tell you explicitly that you need to know beforehand to understand it.
Exactly.
So,
and that's what good, easily consumable media does.
But they make you think that you might have needed to know this thing, and so you feel smarter.
Exactly.
It looks like you're watching high media then.
In a sense, but yeah.
Yeah. We've talked about relatability, replayability. Then there's originality. Do you think that's necessary for something to be entertaining?
It's not.
Nope.
It's not at all.
We talked about sitcoms, how they're the same formula.
Everything's been done before. Yeah, like if anything, when networks are looking for new products to put out, they actually will choose something that has a very similar formula to what has been done before over something that is original. And it could be like something original and like really good, but it breaks that formula just a bit too much. And they have this other thing that's like, oh yeah, this is the same as blank. It's like two broke girls, but instead it's two rich girls who like end up being broke, or it's two African American dudes who are off on an adventure with their white friend, and it's got like the same formulas over and over and over again. Especially since like Friends, like everyone tries to follow like the Friends kind of
and
formula.
then there's like How I Met Your Mother, where it's like the same like group of five, and they're all just having dynamics with each other.
Yeah, and so it's all the same. But as far as being successful, the powers that be kind of choose that, because they can choose like the right time slots to put in like in front of people's faces and like all of this kind of stuff. So originality financially leads to more success, and as far as popularity, I think does too. Just kind of like those two kind of go hand in hand. But it all depends on what you're looking for, because like original stuff often isn't easy to find.
That's kind of that scenario where it's like you can use the formula, but if you don't do it just right, you can like hit a snag and people won't like it.
Yeah, it just gets it. Aesthetics is hard. Arguing entertainment is hard. This is a hell of an episode to start season 2 on.
I know,
because it's just downhill after this. Because I definitely haven't researched the rest of them quite as well.
You got all afternoon.
Oh, it'll be fun.
It'll be fine. I guess we can wrap up on this thing. Do you think there needs to be progression? And I specifically wrote constant progression. So let's say in a TV show, your characters need to evolve and grow and not just be the same one single arc the entire time. Or in a video game, is grinding to beat the next gym a bad thing because there's not like progression? You're just like working at it.
Well, I think in like the scenario of the grinding to meet the next gym, there is progression. It's player progression rather than like specific character arcs, because that gets hard in things like RPGs and stuff where I want this character to like have an arc, but you're controlling them the whole time. The character arc is there as far as storyline, but you are controlling it. So like in video games, it gets a little bit harder to distinguish that. I think my argument for it, at least, would be you're no longer arguing for character arc, arguing for operator arc, I guess is what you consider it. So like the player themselves would change as the game.
So what I was thinking about this was Pokemon. I played the older ones, so I don't know how the newer ones flow and stuff. But you are on a singular path.
Yeah.
And so you are railroaded. It's not like a sandbox where it's like, oh, of course, some areas are going to be harder. You need to grind to be able to get to that area. So you are railroaded in one direction, which I think is fine. But there's points where just like beating the players along the road, getting hit in the grass a couple times isn't enough. And then you just have to start running through the grass over and over again and fighting and leveling up 2 or 3 times. Is that inherently unentertaining when it's forced to grinding just to prolong the game per se?
I would say no. I don't know. I think there's a right and wrong way to do it, and obviously Pokemon found like a good way to do it because they're extremely popular. I think part of what Pokemon did was they did the they gotta catch them all, and so it just became less about grinding. I think what drove mass popularity is like there's what are there, like 1,000 different Pokemon now. I might be exaggerating. I also might not. I don't know.
I think it's like at least 900.
Jesus, man, that's so many.
I remember when it was 107 or whatever it was.
Yeah, last Pokemon I played was Pokemon Yellow.
Okay.
Which is the Pikachu one.
Yeah.
Where you got a little Pikachu outside like following you.
Yeah,
it's
and
like,
you need a Game Boy Color to play that.
Hell yeah. So the game becomes more of a collection, and so it has its own subset of people that like would hit that demographic. So it's like people who like to collect things, people who like to do the grind. Like I'm okay with that every now and then. Like I loved Destiny 2. Like, and that game is almost nothing but grinding just to get to high enough levels to do the next like story missions even.
Because I guess with specifically to Pokemon, they created another element to where your grind doesn't have to be a grind because it can be a chance to catch new Pokemon or try out new moves and like see the different things.
Yeah.
And whereas Destiny, it's a chance to get more loot, which is always kind of nice and fun and exciting. Some games aren't as good at like masking that, and it's like, oh, you're just killing things to level up, and we'll throw loot your way.
Yeah.
Whereas Destiny like makes a little game out of it, and it's like, oh, there's this little.
Yeah, I think Pokemon kind of does that too, except for it's almost like optional loot. Which I mean, I guess I don't know. Like, Pokemon could have just set the original standard for grind games.
Yeah.
Because it's like you're fighting things to level up, so you can fight bigger things, but along the way, you inadvertently kind of earn the ability to get other Pokemon that can help you more. So like if you're going to go into the rock gym, you kind of learn pretty quick that electric type Pokemon don't do well in there. And so you're like, oh, I want to use an earth Pokemon, or I want to use a water Pokemon.
And maybe you're grinding because you didn't decide to pick the right Pokemon and something like that.
Yeah, and so like you're either grinding to get a better move, level up your Pokemon, or you're looking for a specific Pokemon. And so in doing that, I think like a lot of modern games have kind of just taken that formula. They've taken choice away from the character, where it's like, oh yeah, now you get randomized loot. You can't like
we'll just give you a glyph and then you can cash that in, as opposed to like you can choose whether or not you want to catch it or things like that.
And so I don't think that makes it less entertaining at all. I think it just changes the demographic.
So in this scenario, replayability is almost more important than constant progression for the entertaining value.
I would say so.
Because if you can come back and want to grind, that seems more important than like, oh, I have to grind, but I'm still moving forward.
I think there's an argument for either way, because in both you are making progression. It's just one, you're doing it faster. Whereas like you look at a game like Pokemon versus something like, let's say like Breath of the Wild. I haven't played a whole lot of it, but I've seen some gameplay. Maybe Mario Odyssey, where you're just like, you're pretty much just going through the levels. You can just like go through everything one shot. You don't need to like go back and do everything again. But it is replayable. In the grand scheme of things, both of those games are good. They just appeal to different audiences.
And see, this brings up something that I didn't realize earlier, is like with the easy to consume thing, there is too easy to consume. Because with like games, if you can just like walk right through it, that's no fun. That's like defeats the purpose of having a game. And in a book, if they tell you how it's going to end and there's no like mystery or anything, that's no fun either.
I don't know. Have you read John Dies in the End?
Nope.
That's a pretty good book.
Yeah.
John dies in the end.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But
you can know how Harry Potter happens, like the general idea of it. The fun is the road and the path and the journeys and the twists along the way. Do you think there is like too easy to consume?
I think there is. We've run into that before with like video games, where like we started playing something and we're just like, oh, this is just the same.
We're just walking through.
Yeah, we're just like playing this. There's nothing to talk about because it's all the same. And so like, especially in our hobbyist interactions, like even we've noticed there's things that are too easy, I suppose.
Like if you want someone to get to the second floor, you don't want to give them a rock wall because they might not be able to do that. You don't want to give them an escalator because it'll just carry them. And so they kind of like want some stairs or something.
Yeah,
where it's
something like in between.
They feel like they're working towards it, but it's not like made to be difficult necessarily.
Yeah. And that's like it's a hard line to do. And that's why there's so many games and movies that are flops, because it's like they come so close to doing it. But like what differentiates those two is like, extra inch on those steps or whatever, so it like makes them work just a little bit for it. But they know they're going to get it. But yeah, no, I think that's a good way to look at it, like stairs instead of a rock wall.
And then when it comes to the niche group and taste, some people might want that rock wall with a game like Dark Souls or something, where it's like intentionally difficult, or a movie that's like a murder mystery where they don't necessarily like give you all the clues at the end, and you just kind of like have to assume how it ended, like in Inception or something, where at the very end it's like, is he in a dream or not? And then they don't tell you, and then so it's like, oh, that's kind of the rock wall, because you have to like figure it out, and maybe there intentionally isn't an answer.
Yeah, it's kind of like that whole like leaving some of it up to your audience, and I guess you could classify it kind of under the like complimenting your audience, just being like, you're smart enough to figure out what happens next. Yeah. Some people don't like that. Like, there's like that whole taste argument, but I think as a mass appeal, definitely what makes that popular is the fact that it's easy enough to consume, but not too easy. So what have we learned today, Noah?
We've learned a lot of stuff. Things like replayability is a good thing to have. Progression may or may not be necessary for entertainment. Originality and popularity have all their own little factors in it. You kind of want it to be easy, and you want, for entertainment purposes, you want it to appeal to a lot of people. But there's so many different options for what is good, what is entertainment, what do you find entertaining personally versus what I do.
Just getting that whole taste argument, dude.
Right?
It's just so
we
dumb.
tried to name some things that would overall never be a bad thing and just apply to anything. Tell us how we did. Thanks for watching or listening or watching wherever you're at.
Yeah.
You can get us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We're a lot of places.
We might be on Apple Podcasts.
We might be.
now.
We're trying.
We're trying.
We're doing what we can. But you can find us. Yeah, thanks for showing up for our next season. I'm excited. Thank you, Joey, for being here with me.
Man, I wouldn't miss it for the world.
Do you want to tell people where they can contact us if they want to give us topics or questions?
Bro, you can just check out that description. Check out that email. It's humorish.tm@gmail.com.
Hey.
If you ever want to help us out and give us some topics, because, we always struggle with it a little bit. And, eventually we might have a Patreon where you guys can go and talk to us there.
But it helps with that relatability factor. If you have a topic you want us to talk about,
you guys
we can be relatable.
Could be like, hey, you guys should talk about Pokemon more. I want to hear what you guys have to say about the sun and moon.
And then I'd be like, I only play Fire Red. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's like I literally only own Silver and Yellow, so it's like on the Game Boy Color.
I own Pokemon Go. Is that good enough?
Yeah, I haven't touched a DS since I was like 13.
Same.
It's so wild. Like, mobile gaming, as I got older, just became less of a part of my life.
Yep.
It's just like, I don't do it.
Yeah. Well, you have less time to game in general. And then whenever you're on the go, you're actively like driving or something. Whereas a kid, you're like in the back seat.
Yeah. I feel like, handheld games were just made to shut kids up. And it works.
Yep.
It works really well.
No, I know so many parents who give their kids like just iPads now because they're like, you can't knock it until you're on a plane and they're screaming for 3 hours and then they instantly shut up when they have an iPad.
Yeah. It's like people are like, oh my God, these kids are being ruined by all this like media. It's like, yeah, but I don't know how the fuck you parent without that kind of stuff, because I would definitely kill my kid. I would just like
I'm just going to say, before iPads, child abuse was probably higher than it is now.
I'd agree.
So just the correlation there.
Yeah. But see you guys next week.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Bye. Hey everyone, thanks for listening to this Humorish podcast. If you liked it, check out our other content. You can email your topic suggestions to humorish.tm@gmail.com. You can also find us on YouTube or on Twitter @humorish_tm or use the hashtag NoahAsked. The podcast music was Watercolors by Vic Davie.